welcome back to Superior Synergy Games. I'm back, guys. Sorry I took a little bit of time off here. I did a lot of traveling. I was kind of away from my computer for the past few weeks, but I'm back and ready to start making some content for y'all. So I do want to start off with our Mishi Monday last night that we hosted. We had a record-breaking 46 people participate in it. We are hosting Mishi Mondays up until Atlanta. We will be hosting under that set 1 through 3 format so that people who are trying to get their practice in for Atlanta can do so. It's because we're hosting under the best of 2 format. So if you're also looking to kind of maybe see some of the top decks that are topping this event and may just be topping Atlanta, definitely check us out as we'll be posting this weekly up all the way until Atlanta. So let's dive right in here and look at the top 8 deck list to see what won, just so we can kind of get an idea of that field out there. So first place was, I believe it's The Rat, I believe that's what the name is. So a local player that plays a lot with us here, a lot of different matches they play with us. So looking into their deck right away, they've got Emerald Amethyst. So looks like your traditional kind of Emerald Amethyst that you see, obviously the nice 1-2 start here with the Cursed Merfolk and Flynn Riders. They obviously had the tech in here of the Lyle Tiberius, which is such a solid card if you can get it out and force your opponent to have to swing into the Merfolk and the Flynn Rider. Interesting to see no Prince John. I have seen some people kind of try and drop that in there as well and have their opponents draw you cards, but I'm sure this card worked out quite well for them. I think the kit is another one that some people are kind of, they love or they don't love. So I know people are kind of trying to figure out the right number of kits. 2 seems pretty all right to me. And then obviously you've got the full set of the Ursulas and the Mims, the 2 Maleficents, your whole Merlin package, and then some extra 1-drops here, some extra removal with the Mother Knows Best, and then just some extra drawing between the Friends and the Queen's Castle down here. So overall a great build. The Tinkerbells are always an interesting addition, as you obviously kind of do have to deal with those enemy evasives and see what exactly they're running to maybe be able to take things out. Obviously you have a little bit of removal out here between Kit and the Mother Knows Best, but I'm curious to see how these Tinkerbells work for the Rat. If 2 is the number they like, if this is a card they still would include in the future. But very cool to see Emerald Amethyst top this event. And just to give you all a little sneak peek, actually second place was also Emerald Amethyst. So obviously this matchup, its toughest matchup that it has is against your kind of your Steel Song decks, and so I'm just going to take a guess that hope maybe they avoided a lot of Steel Song throughout the night and maybe got to play against a lot of maybe Ruby Sapphire that this deck can pair pretty nicely up against, being as aggro as it can go. So that would be my guess. I'd love to hear either of these 2 players. I believe this is Josh Parks right here who ended up getting second place. So let me know what maybe your matchups were, or let the comments know what your matchups were, as I know the Steel Song is definitely the most difficult one for this deck. So we see a very similar list here in second place. I don't believe first place had the Pascals. And then a difference as well is I don't see the Lyle Tiberius in here as well. So I do know these people played in the final round, and I know the Rat came out on top. So I'm guessing those Tiberiuses, Lyle Tiberius kind of was the deciding factor when you have 2 really aggro decks and one of them is making the other opponent lose lore as their characters are banished. So maybe in the mirror that is the card to use. But other than that, we see some pretty similar lists. Obviously an extra kit here for Josh, and then the same numbers for the Tinkerbells. So again, would love to hear how this mirror went, but that is definitely my guess, is that Lyle was kind of the deciding factor between why the Rat was able to kind of take it out and get the win here today, or last night. So congrats to both players topping this large event here with the same exact deck. So it's cool to see Emerald Amethyst be doing so well. So maybe this is the deck to be playing for Atlanta. So I guess be tuning in and be watching out. So going into third place here, we've got Theodore Parsons, and it looks like this is our first up here of the Sapphire Ruby deck, which, as I said, I believe is it's very weak against these first 2 decks that I just showed off. So would make sense if they had paired up and then this person had lost. So starting out, I think Ruby Sapphire decks have definitely established these 2 song packages between the Jump Ahead and the Far I'll Goes. I know some people are running the full 4 of How Far I'll Go, but I think these have definitely established themselves as ramp tools that are needed to get ahead. Going down, obviously the Be Prepared is what you're trying to ramp to clear the board so that you can control a late game. So then obviously lots of different numbers of cards here throughout the rest of these characters. It looks like there's the one manor, but it looks like this person had decided to go with the bells as the kind of their win condition at the end. I know manor was played a little bit back in the day, but I think people have gone back to bell and just kind of using that lucky dime combo because you're going to run the lucky dime anyway. 3 Queen of Hearts, obviously got to kind of deal with these aggro matchups that are out there, which we kind of saw get first and second. So pretty good number there at 3. Could maybe see this bumping to 4 if maybe there is a giant aggro field out there. Really do like the Tremaine Medusa numbers here, being able to remove along with the Maleficent. So 2 scars seems about right. And overall, I think they have a very solid number of characters in here. Going down into their items, I have seen some people ditch the Shield of Virtues. I think it's a good item, especially if you're just trying to protect your stuff or maybe re-ready it so it can attack after it's quested. So, and it's a cheap item that Flavor Sham can just blow up and draw you more cards. So I do like the inclusion, but I know some people have shifted elsewhere with their decks. And then down here we've got obviously the 4 Develop Your Brains and the 1 Manor. Interesting to see the 1 Manor in here. I personally don't really love 1-ofs in this game, just having such a large deck of 60. I feel like I'm never going to find that 1-of. I like to at least have 2 of, but I'd love to hear what they thoughts on the Manor. If maybe it's something that they cut maybe for the 4th bell, or just they like that threat of the Manor as their opponent might believe that they have more and start kind of prepping and maybe hold a Rise of Titans that they aren't inking that they really probably should. So really solid Ruby Sapphire list here out of Theodore Parsons, so congrats to them on 3rd place. Going into 4th here, we've got Real Talk, who looks like ran a Steel Song deck. So this is our first seeing the Steel Song decks, and we've got 3 different decks here in the top 4. So really cool, diverse meta. Obviously, 1st and 2nd were the same decks, but cool to see a difference here. And I'm just going to scroll down to the item and see that we do have the flute variation. So I personally, if I was heading to Atlanta, I would be much more looking into this flute version because I think it pairs better against Ruby Amethyst decks. Being able to gain lore that they can't remove at all since they don't have any item removal in that deck. So I wonder if that was their thought process or if they just really do favor the flute variation. And going on here looking at their songs, obviously the 2 Grab Your Swords, got to always at least have 1 or 2 of these to deal with things. 3 Bare Necessities is interesting. I personally am at a point in this meta that I like to run 4 of this just because it feels like you're always going to hit something and the hand knowledge is amazing. In worst case, it's inkable. When you're going against those tough matchups with this, like that Ruby Sapphire, you got to be able to get those Bone Quills out of their hand and maybe leave them with a bunch of uninkables in their hand because they're kind of relying on that Bone Quill to ramp them. Going down the line here, the 3 Long Came Zeus seems just about right here. Obviously, the Storm Rage Down and Strength of Raging Fire are perfect at 4. Looking at their characters now, since obviously they went the flute variation and not the lantern variation. Taking a look here, the full package of the Robin Hood and the Ariel. Interesting to only see the 2 Tinkerbells. Same with the 2 Benjas. I think Benja right now is super good, and I personally would love to even see it maybe 3 or 4 of these, just due to the fact that like this deck's toughest matchup is Ruby Sapphire, and this card plays so well into Ruby Sapphire for 2 different reasons. Like 1, it quests for 2, so it's super great to kind of go out a little more aggro against that Ruby Sapphire matchup. And then 2, hopefully you remove their card that they were hoping to either remove themselves or just kind of stop their ramp altogether. I think the 2 Beasts is perfect for this. It lets you kind of transition into that draw portion of the game if you do want to go down that route. Otherwise, you obviously have your whole new world if you want to have both you and the other player draw some more cards. Only the 3 Rapunzels. I personally, I like the 3 Rapunzels. I would maybe be going down to 2 and kind of following that same Beast package where you have another option if you're not going to sing the whole new world to draw into cards. And then we've got obviously the whole 3 ofs of the Queens. So not having the lanterns, I can see these only being at the 3 ofs. So really nice list here. I don't know if Smee is super, like if it's a card a lot of people are running right now in Amber Steel, but it's definitely an interesting inclusion here as well as it can help kind of go aggro. But unless you obviously have the Rapunzel that you're going to hit, it's eventually going to be taking a lot of damage. So I don't think there's any captains in this deck at all. So I'm sure that was their strategy, but definitely a very interesting inclusion there of this Smee. So congrats to Real Talk there on 4th place. Going into 5th, we've got Kevin Johnson coming in with a Amethyst Steel, so totally new deck we haven't seen yet tonight. Let's start this off looking at their characters. Obviously, they went all in on the Benja, kind of expecting a lot of those items. And more Robin Hoods out here. Really just all of the great cards in Amethyst, the whole bounce package, mixed with the nice Pascals to have that early evasive. Yep, they've got Hook, Robin Hood, and Pascal as their 1-drops. The 2 of the Pinocchio seems amazing with this bounce package to kind of just keep replaying it over and over again and maybe deal with opponents' characters. I do love this deck because there's so many variations of Amethyst Steel out there that you really don't know. If you're the opponent, you don't know what variation they're coming out with. You don't know if there's going to be some Jafars coming out. You don't know if it's this kind of more mid-range deck. And it definitely makes for some interesting games because your opponent early on has to kind of figure out what you're playing, and you can only show them so much if you want to, and try and pretend that you are on a different variation. So obviously tons of different actions and song removal in these decks. Smash dealing with that 3-cost Ursula and so many annoying 3-costs. Really great card. It's not singable, but when you can remove something that's with an inkable card like this, pretty solid. Baboom, a great card to deal with those early threats, maybe the early 1-cost Cinderella. Really great. And then obviously Zeus, really awesome when you can sing it with maybe one of your Merlins. So good to have the removal and the extra draw with the friends. The Social Spellbook's an interesting inclusion. I personally thought the meta had moved a little more away from this due to the fact that there's so much item removal being run right now between Benjas, Wildcats, Rise of the Titans. Like, items are a threat right now, and when you have an uninkable one like this, it does make it tough because you can't ditch it out of your hand. With a deck like this, you have to kind of play it to the field, and if it dies the next turn, it really usually didn't get the great amount of value. So really good item. Just I think the meta might have shifted a little away from this, but I would love to hear the thoughts from this player here and let us know how this item did perform for you. And then obviously this is kind of more of a Queen's Castle build. You have your extra draw here as well as some nice lore gain that can happen with the Queen's Castle. So I would love to wonder why they aren't on 4. I mean, 3 is a good number, but would also be interested to see if they had ever thought about just stacking all 4 in here and going all out on the castles. I just think castle is the best location out there, and I'd love to play 4 if I can play 4. So congrats here on Kevin Johnson on a really cool deck. Definitely love to see all the variation here tonight. Let's take a look at Jeff Shank, and looks like they are on Ruby Sapphire, so our second Ruby Sapphire here. I already see they are playing all 4 of How Far I'll Goes, whereas the other player was only playing 3. Otherwise, we still have that same song package. Like I said, people have kind of established that this is necessary for the ramp. Looking at their other characters here, I don't see any Lady Tremaines, and it looks like they went all in on the Medusa and Maleficent removal package, which, I mean, they're great. There's a lot of things with under 3 attack that need to get removed by Medusa, and if she can't remove it, the Maleficent Dragon will remove it in the other case. So other than that, I think the characters look the exact same. Only the 3 Queen of Hearts, the 2 Scars, the 3 Bells. Would love to see here what they don't have the McDuck Manor, so it looks like they're only on the bells. And then going down here looking at their items, I think the only other variation is the other deck was only running 1 Shielded Virtue. So very similar lists. I really like Sapphire Ruby. I think it is one of the best decks out there. So here are 2 really great variations of them with little small differences between them, between the removal package and a little more of the ramp. So really like the list. Congrats to Jeff on a 6th place finish. Going into 7, we got Jose. We got Ruby Amethyst. So this is our first Ruby Amethyst that we are seeing here tonight. And let's kind of take a look. Obviously the songs are going to be the same in most of these decks. I know some people have maybe cut down to 3 friends, but I think having them at the 4 and having that draw power is incredibly strong. Queen's Castle and the Spellbook. Alright, so it looks like here for the 1-drops, or they got the Rafiki and the Olaf. No Teeth and Ambitions or anything like that, but it looks like they just have your kind of core of your bounce package. Not running any of the Maleficent Dragons and instead splitting up the Tremaines and the Medusas. I like the 1 of Pinocchio. I personally probably, if I'm going to run Pinocchio, I'm going to run at least 2. So if I was to make 1 change, I like this deck, but I would probably be cutting 1 Maleficent to add another Pinocchio. But otherwise, this is a really solid Ruby Amethyst deck. Got the 4 Queens Castle, so they're all out on that strategy. I think it's a really strong strategy, and I think really lean into it. And then my only question, same that I had with the Amethyst Steel, is was the spellbook good? If it was, really great to have gained them some lore, but I'm just curious if this is still too slow and too easy to remove. And maybe if I had to cut something else for that extra Pinocchio, this is maybe one of the other cards that I would personally cut. Other than that, I love this deck. I think this deck will always top or finish up very well for players if you're looking for something to pick up and do well with. So congrats here on that 7th place finish. And again, a whole totally different deck that we haven't seen yet tonight. And then finally, we've got Hayden Dodd. So our 8th place finish was another new deck. So we've got a Sapphire Steel deck out here. So that we only had 2 repeat decks in the entirety of the top 8, so 6 different decks. There's a lot of options out here, so if you're looking for what to play for Atlanta, here are some nice options. So obviously they're running, this is the first we've seen Let It Go as some removal. Really good against maybe the Amber Steel when you need to remove their large Cinderella. Good against the Ruby Sapphire if you need to remove the Tamatoa. So really great to just kind of get rid of a big threat. Obviously, you're giving that advantage to your opponent, but it's at least inkable if you don't want to use it. And sometimes you just have to do it. Like when those threats hit the board early, you got to get rid of them, or they're going to kind of take the game away, and it'll kind of be a snowball effect. So interesting to see the 1-of Fire the Cannons. I still, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of 1-of, so I would at least be running 2 of these because I just don't think I'd find it in the cases that I want it if I'm not running 2. I'm assuming they're running this to maybe deal with those early Cinderellas or just some other early, maybe Rafiki. Just kind of remove the opponent's early cards so you can kind of get some ramp in while they don't have much of a board on the field. And then late game, obviously, you don't really need it all that much. I like the Baboom. Really great to have that inkable option. I think 2 Rise of the Titans is perfect. Obviously, not all the decks tonight were running locations, but the ones that were, like if that Queen's Castle hits the field, it can do a lot of damage to you. So going into the characters here, we see a character I didn't even bring up talking about how items are really popular right now. This is another card that can kind of just remove those items and then just be a body on board. So I really like the set 3. I'm curious to hear how it performed for them tonight. So please, if you do watch this video, let me know if you like this beast. Would you keep it at this number? Would you cut it, or would you add any more? And then we kind of just have our typical Sapphire Steel. I know Tamatoa hasn't always been in these decks, but I mean it's a big threat. 8 strength is a lot to deal with for a lot of decks. I think a lot of decks these days rely on that Along Came Zeus to be the removal, and they don't have cards like Let It Go that can just completely get rid of a card. It's not damage based. And so I think Tamatoa is a really sneaky card in here. And I bet you this card got them a lot of wins last night, kind of coming down and maybe just surprising their opponent and replaying some of those items that the opponent maybe had thought were long gone for the rest of the game, especially if maybe they wheeled them away with a whole new world. I think Mickey Mouse has kind of become a little more relevant in this deck. I know a lot of people are running Bare Necessities to maybe snipe those Fishbone Quills. This just gives people that other option to play on that turn 3 to get some ramp going. In worst case, this Mickey goes straight into the Inkwell off your Fishbone Quill once you play it. Obviously, the Tinkerbell Cogsworth to me are kind of the core of this deck in terms of removal and protecting your cards. And then obviously you need to have the Search of the Gaston and the Game Finisher on the bell. 2 Lucky Dimes, the 4 Popsicles, the 4 Fishbone. I guess this Tamatoa also lets this person get the Lucky Dime back if they wheel it away, or maybe they had to discard it off against maybe a green steel deck. So really a strong combo there. So really like to see the Sapphire Steel make it up here. And yeah, congrats to Hayden. So looking at these top 8, we didn't see a single green steel last night, which was crazy to not have made. I think that deck, a lot of people have been talking about, is kind of like the #1 deck right now. So I'm not sure people were just trying to find ways to counter it. It's very interesting to see why that deck did not make it in any of the top 8s tonight. So cool to see a large variety out here. We're going to be hosting these Mishi Mondays every single week here up until Atlanta. So we host them every week either way, but we're going to hold them in the set 1 through 3 format. So if you are looking to get some practice in for Atlanta and want to know what decks are really, really good and kind of what is the meta, because it's always shifting, but what's the meta like right before this event, come check us out. We play every Monday. We start at about 7 p.m. Central. and it's about a 4 or 5 hour tournament. So we hopefully will be streaming it these next 2 weekends too. If you're next few Mondays, if you're not able to make it at all, and you can watch the event and kind of get your eyes on this meta a little bit more as well. So really appreciate everyone tuning in and checking this out. I'll have next week's event linked down in the comments. I'll also have a link to our Discord down in the comments as well. And yeah, thank you all for watching the video, and stay tuned. We will have a lot more videos coming out soon. We're going to definitely be focusing a little bit here on preparing for Atlanta for people, but we'll also hopefully have some cool new deck lists with the new set 4 cards. So thank you all for watching. This has been Superior Synergy Games.